We're going to start with the quarterbacks. So we're going to show you our consensus rankings. You can see our individual rankings. And yes, they are on the site, cbssports.com. You can check out our Week 1 rankings. But here's our consensus rankings for our quarterbacks. So no surprise with the 5 guys at the top. These were the 5 guys that were drafted in some order: Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, and Jalen Hurts. Patrick Mahomes, number 6. And then we get to number 7, where things get a little bit of a change from what our consensus rankings are. Dave, when you see Dak Prescott, number 7, you're the high guy on Dak. You think he's going to have a big game tonight against the Eagles?
I don't think a big game is in line, but a decent game against Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm terrified. Their team totaled 19.5 points against an Eagles defense that had lost some guys, but also has so many young former first-rounders that could be improved this year.
All right, you see Baker Mayfield should have a good game against the Atlanta Falcons. Bo Nix should do whatever he wants to against the Tennessee Titans, just based on how the game flow should go. And then we got some other quarterbacks here that we're going to look at. Kyler Murray is in a great spot taking on the New Orleans Saints. As we flip the page to rankings 13 through 24, you're seeing some guys here that we are very fond of for this week. Drake Maye is the start of the week. We'll talk about that in a second. Heath, you really like Trevor Lawrence, though, for this week.
Absolutely. Fantastic matchup. First time we get to see him with Liam Cohen. First time we get to see him with Travis Hunter. He should be a top 10 quarterback this week.
All right, so we'll get into a lot of these rankings. We're going to break it down from guys that we like to start, guys we're going to avoid from a sit perspective, some sleepers that we like, and also some news that we're keeping an eye on. So Matthew Stafford and Jordan Love both off the injury report on Wednesday. Dave, any interest in starting those guys, Stafford in his matchup against the Texans and Jordan Love taking on the Lions?
I mean, modest interest in Love, and in DFS, I'd be more interested in both of those guys because I'm just trying to have a different lineup. But in redraft, absolutely not.
All right, so some fantasy managers, 14-team leagues, 16-team leagues, you might have to start one of those guys. I think we all probably agree Love over Stafford, just given
a lot.
The circumstances and the matchup. All right, let's talk about some of the things that we're looking at here. And again, the rankings for us, we spend a lot of time going through this to make sure that the process comes out to where it's good for everybody, depending on who you follow. You might follow Heath, you might follow Dave, you might follow me. But again, we're looking at the consensus rankings. So there's always one player at every position, maybe 2, maybe 10, that we're going to be a little bit of like, man, I like the matchup, but I don't like the player. I like the player, I don't like the matchup. Who is the toughest player for you to rank week 1 at the quarterback position?
It's Purdy. And it's because I think that Seattle defense could end up being a lot better than we think it is. And I think their pass rush is going to be dangerous. And we don't know how healthy Jawan Jennings is and how quickly Purdy will be able to get the ball. And there's that guy back for 49ers, that running back, Christian McCaffrey. Handing off to him doesn't get him any fantasy points. He's outside of my top 12.
Interesting. You also have not a great feeling about Brock Purdy this week.
Not a great feeling. It's getting better as Jawan Jennings is working his way back into things. I think and we've heard a little bit like this idea of Ricky Pearsall as the number 1 wide receiver and Sky Moore and Russell Gage maybe as the number 2 and number 3. Pretty terrifying to me. Another game that doesn't have an extremely high over-under. And so, yeah, a little bit nervous about Purdy. If Jennings gets in a full practice by Friday, I'll move Purdy up a little bit.
Okay, so we'll see how Jennings goes, but trending in the right direction. Jennings we'll talk about a little bit. Got his contract extension based on some playing time incentives that you brought up, which is a great situation. He's going to play through some injuries, most likely, because he wants to get to that $3 million that the 49ers have dangling out in front of him. But good that situation got resolved. The toughest player for you to rank, though, Heath, is who?
It's got to be Caleb Williams. And it's partially just the juxtaposition between what we thought Caleb Williams was a year ago at this time and what we saw from Caleb Williams on the football field. But then also he gets Ben Johnson. He gets Colston Loveland. He gets Luther Burden. We heard a lot in training camp about, oh, man, he's struggling, things look ugly. And then we see him in the preseason against the Chiefs, and he looks awesome. Caleb Williams could be one of the breakout quarterbacks of this year, and it could start week 1. But also there's plenty of reason to have concern.
Did have one great game against the Vikings last year, one miserable game, but that was, as the season evolves, we'll see how it goes into year 2, but more importantly, Ben Johnson. So hopefully it is a good start for Caleb Williams. I don't know how many people are starting him in 1 quarterback leagues, but, should be interesting to see how he does for Superflex and 2 quarterback managers. For me, the toughest guy to rank is Patrick Mahomes. We're, I think, all excited to see how this is going to look. But the history against the Chargers last year, not very good in those 2 games. No Rashee Rice, as we know, for the first 6 games of the season. So you're starting Mahomes. Obviously, nobody's going to tell you to sit Mahomes. At least, I don't think anybody here is going to tell you to sit Mahomes. No. But I hope to see him come out and have a big game so that we can justify he was a steal potentially in round 4, as opposed to, oh, my gosh, I'm dealing with this again. A guy's going to hover around that 20-point per game range. So let's go for a big game for Patrick Mahomes as he takes on the Chargers in Brazil. So Chargers had his number last year. We'll see what happens for this year. Let's move on now to guys that were starting for this week. So Heath, you're starting Jordan Love. Dave, you're starting Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to start Drake Maye again at the start of the week. So a little disagreement here on Jordan Love. So you actually like him for this week, and you're just a little tepid in terms of how you want to approach him for this week.
Well, it's almost like how I feel about Brock Purdy. He's okay, but I can find other quarterbacks I like better. And one that I do like better is Trevor Lawrence going up against Carolina. I know that defensive line is healthy. I still don't know how dangerous that pass rush is, and I don't know how deep that secondary is. And I do like that receiving core for Jacksonville. And I've got questions about their run game. So I think that there is a chance where Trevor Lawrence can come out of the week as a top 10 quarterback.
So I totally like Trevor Lawrence more than Jordan Love. Dave just sent his email in first, so I had to take the next guy in my top 12. And Jordan Love is in my top 12. I think we'll see the pass rate rebound from last year because what they did last year, being one of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL, is not typically what we've seen from Matt LaFleur. I think the fact that he actually has a number one wide receiver and first-round pick Matthew Golden helps Jordan Love. And I know we just said he came off the injury report. It was his left thumb. He's healthy in terms of running the football. And so I think we see him bounce back as a rusher as well. He's QB 12 for me, so someone you can start definitely over Goff and Dak.
So a couple questions, because I originally, when I was writing start set yesterday, I had him as a start and then got a little nervous for a couple reasons. One, the history against the Lions not great, and they're getting healthy on defense. So we're going to see new coordinator, Aiden Hutchinson back. How much will that impact Jordan Love from a high-end potential? No Jaden Reed, most likely, the way it's looking, trending in the wrong direction. So yes, he does have Matthew Golden, but no Christian Watson. We know for the majority of the season, and now potentially no Jaden Reed. So can Jordan Love put together enough stats, enough production that you're going to say, okay, top 10 finish? Because that's kind of what I think we're looking for with nobody on a bye.
No, I think he can, and I think the nice thing about the way the Packers receiving core was built before they got Matthew Golden was that they had four guys who were all kind of number two wide receivers, and if they lost two of them, they still had two guys that were number two wide receivers. Romeo Doubs will be just fine as the second guy behind Matthew Golden, and Tucker Kraft is one of the most efficient tight ends in the NFL.
That's the one that I'm looking for is Tucker Kraft. I think he could end up being second on the team in targets.
I hope so for the season. I don't love him for this week, though, just because the Lions were great against tight ends last year. They were great against me. Did score a touchdown, but only one of three guys to score a touchdown against the Lions from the tight end position. So if he does not find the end zone, it could be a little difficult for him. We'll talk about that later, though. For me, it's Drake Maye. He's the start of the week for us on CBSSports.com. Love the setup for him. My most drafted quarterback, my most rostered player overall. I think Drake Maye is going to get off to a great start against the Raiders defense. That still could be a work in progress. Yes, Pete Carroll's going to do some nice things with them over the course of the season, but I think the addition of Josh McDaniels, Travion Henderson, Stephon Diggs, maybe Kyle Williams, just a lot of things to like about the scenario for Drake Maye. So use his legs a little bit in this game as well. He did that last year, would have been on pace in his healthy games to be the third best rushing quarterback. So just a great setup for them at home against a team West Coast to East Coast. I think Josh McDaniels want to stick it to his old team as well. So like the setup for Drake Maye as a top 10 quarterback. Let's go now to the quarterbacks to sit, Dave. And Justin Fields was a guy that you started out liking in the offseason, or didn't like in the offseason, then you liked him a little bit, then you got off a little bit after watching him perform in the preseason. It's just a brutal matchup against the Steelers.
And the brutal matchups will continue after this week. You can look at the schedule and see that for yourself. But the Steelers know all about this guy. So even if he was a halfway decent thrower of the football, they would know here are his strengths, here are his weaknesses. The problem is that he's not that great of a thrower. He's a runner. The Steelers have done a great job against rushing quarterbacks over the years, and it makes me very nervous to start really a lot of Jets, but especially Justin Fields.
Yeah, the Steelers number 4 in fewest rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks last year, and as you mentioned, they faced Lamar Jackson.
2 games against Lamar.
Yeah, twice in a season, so they do a really good job under Mike Tomlin. Brock Purdy, we already talked about. You're a little bit concerned. If Jennings full practice, though, how much will you move Brock Purdy up and take him off this list?
So I've got him, I think, at 18 right now. He would get into the top 15. I don't think I'd have him ahead of Jordan Love, but I would definitely move him up. It's so interesting as good and efficient as Jauan Jennings has been when given the opportunity and the number of targets that went his way last year. I just feel better about Purdy, but not quite into the top 12 range because even guys who have practiced the full week after holding out, and I'm not saying Jauan Jennings was holding out, but those guys have often struggled in week 1.
I will say the one thing that I do like about Purdy, his track record against Seattle, including the 2 games last year against Mike McDonald, so to face this defense.
Sure.
He's been 20 or more fantasy points in 4 or 5 games, including both those last year. So I actually think he's not a bad play this week, but I understand, again, some of the concerns. Great week for quarterbacks this week for some of the guys that we're going to see. For me, I'm going to sit Jared Goff. Just a bad track record in Lambeau Field. 3 straight years in a row where he's been under 17 fantasy points. I want to see how this new offense is going to look. I want to see how much Micah Parsons is going to play and how much of an impact that's going to make on this defense. And so typically, if you're drafting a guy like Jared Goff, Brock Purdy's probably in a similar situation. If you're drafting Justin Fields in a similar situation, you're drafting these guys, you don't want to go to the waiver wire and pick somebody else up. Go see if Trevor Lawrence is there because he could have a better opportunity this week against the Carolina Panthers. Go see if some of these other sleepers we're going to talk about in a second, maybe not the Joe Flaccos of the world, but Jared Goff, Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, not exactly the best scenarios. So you might want to try and find another quarterback if, in fact, you didn't draft one, and there are some guys on the waiver wire. And then sleeper for this week, I think this is important because a lot of people, as we get into the running backs and wide receivers, guys you could pick up off waivers. So for you, it's Bryce Young. For you, it's J.J. McCarthy. For me, it is the old man, Joe Flacco. Make your case why Bryce Young could be a top 10 quarterback.
He's got
top 12 quarterback.
He's got Tedero McMillan, who might be a top 12 wide receiver by the end of this year. He was awesome at the end of last year. Second year in Dave Canales' system, facing a Jacksonville defense that may be just as bad as the Panthers defense on Bryce Young's own team. This could turn into the shootout of the week.
I see your Tedero McMillan, and I raise you Justin Jefferson because that's who J.J. McCarthy's going to throw to. Bears are going to play a lot more man coverage than we're used to seeing. That's because Dennis Allen is there. McCarthy can run a little bit on top of throwing to these great receivers that he has. It's not just Jefferson. T.J. Hawkinson's there too. And I think they're going to put some points up on Chicago's secondary, which is a little beat up right now.
Adam Thielen, don't forget about the old man coming back.
I forgot about Adam Thielen.
Yeah. It does suck that he doesn't have Jordan Addison, but it's going to be fun to see.
They got Adam Thielen. Same thing, right?
I think this is the most fascinating game to watch as a fantasy manager because you have all the things going on with the Bears offense and Caleb Williams and DeAndre Swift and just all the pass catchers. And then you have the whole situation of J.J. McCarthy. Can he be as good as Sam Darnold? Can he continue this? Kirk Cousins to Darnold. This is the guy that's got more upside maybe than both those two. Hopefully that continues. For me, I'm going to go with Joe Flacco. I know it's tough to say you're going to start Joe Flacco in a one-quarterback league, but the matchup is as good as you could possibly find. And the last time we saw him in this offense, it was 5 straight games in a row with 300 or more passing yards, 5 straight games in a row with 20 or more fantasy points. And so opportunity is there. Matchup is great. I think Flacco can get you off to a good start if you're desperate. But it was just shocking to me when doing waiver wire this week that he's only 10% rostered. Now, I think that speaks to clearly how many people actually play Superflex in 2 quarterback leagues. But if he's on your waiver wire, go pick him up. It could be a 10-team league if you don't have some options on waivers. This guy could get you off to a very good start based on how he operates in Kevin Stefanski's offense. So I want to have Joe Flacco on my team, certainly in Superflex in 2 quarterback leagues, and maybe even in 1 quarterback leagues if you're stuck. Joe Flacco can help you. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We come back. Our buddy Robert Turbin is going to join us. We're going to break down running backs, look at the running back rankings, give you the starts, the sits, and the sleepers that you need for week number 1.